and welcome to episode 10 of the Crash and Ride podcast. I'm Patrick Ferguson. I'm your host. Today's guest is Evan Rowe, drummer for the Durham, North Carolina band Maple Stave, as well as drummer for the Americana band J Kutchma and the 5/5. I've just gotten home from tour. I'm here at my house in Bishop, Georgia, with all the windows and doors open because it's beautiful outside. Pinky Doodle Poodle had a great tour. We played Chapel Hill, Brooklyn, Buffalo, Canton, Ohio, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Washington, D.C., and then the van broke down just north of Charlotte, North Carolina on the way to our last show of the tour. The van is still in Charlotte. I'm hoping it's just a busted fuel pump, but Ian Pasquini, the drummer for the outstanding noise rock band Jesus Crust, stepped in and loaned us his van, and we got home and played our last show. Did a triumphant homecoming gig at the Flicker Bar here in Athens. It's been a great couple of weeks. I got to see a bunch of old friends and play some great music, and man, it was good. I really like those Rust Belt cities, Buffalo and Pittsburgh in particular. Just they own my heart. Love playing there. I got some upcoming dates with a bunch of bands I want to tell you about. I'm playing Thursday, May 16th. 5/8 is doing an acoustic gig at Buteco in Atlanta. And then Pinky Doodle Poodle's got a whole bunch of shows coming up in the next month or so. We're playing May 18th at Altered Frequencies in Franklin, North Carolina. Playing May 25th at Smith's Old Bar in Atlanta, Georgia. May 31st at the Georgia Theater Rooftop in Athens, Georgia. June 1st at 529 in Atlanta. Then in June, man, there's a whole ton of dates, and I'll tell you about those as they get closer. But, oops. I got some big news. Based on, the strength of what we've been doing so far here, we've picked up some sponsors. So I'll have sort of ready to go messages for them, but Jittery Joe's Coffee, who are already working on the Crash and Ride Espresso blend, is going all in. And as of the 1st of June, if you have signed up for the $30 support level per month, you'll get a can of Crash and Ride Espresso in the mail. So there'll be a new level in the next couple of days at patreon.com/crashandride, and it'll say coffee subscription. And you'll be supporting the show, and you'll get a can of Crash and Ride Espresso in the mail. It'll be whole bean. We took 2 pounds of it on tour with us with a couple of pour-over filters, and man, we wiped it out in about a week and a half. It's pretty delicious, and I've heard that Jittery Joe's is maybe going to make it one of their 3 flagship espressos, so I'm stoked about that. Also, Nick Greer from Greer Amplification contacted me, and he wants to sponsor the show, and so that's going to be super exciting. I'm a big fan of Nick Greer's pedals. He's made a huge splash in the Americana world with the Lightspeed, which is a distortion pedal that's great for Americana. It doesn't really conceal the actual tone of your guitar, but it gives it just the right amount of grit and burn. Sounds great. Both the guitar players in 5/8 use it, and it's a really good pedal. I personally love the Sucker Punch, which is the sort of balls out super heavy noise rock distortion pedal that he made a couple of years ago, and I think he still makes. I run my Univox High Flyer through it and just break windows. It's great. So that relationship is being formalized as we speak. Expect to actually hear some sponsor messages in future episodes. I'm super stoked about that. If you know of an organization or company that might want to sponsor Crash and Ride, have them hit me up. crashandride@protonmail.com. It's spelled exactly like it sounds. I just want to remind everybody, if you're having a tough time and you're contemplating self-harm, 24/7, free, confidential. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is 1-800-273-8255. That's 1-800-273-8255. I want to tell you a little bit about the interview that I'm broadcasting today, because Evan is an old friend of mine. He's someone I know has really struggled with depression. We talk about meds, and we talk about electro-convulsive therapy, and we talk about how those things stopped working for him. And Evan is a really low-key guy. He's very, very quiet. You would not believe how high I had his microphone turned up for this interview. And we did this interview in a friend's apartment in Durham. We were both sitting on the floor in the bedroom of this big apartment. And as the interview went on, Evan was so low-key and so thoughtful, and was kind of reliving a lot of the trauma as we discussed it. And as he was telling me about the electro-convulsive therapy not working anymore, I thought, this is the last thing Evan is going to do, and he's going to go home and do something terrible. And it really freaked me out. And you can kind of hear me for a few minutes. I disengage a little because I was in a bit of a panic. I was like, how can I help Evan? He's having a tougher time than I even realized. And I was really worried about what was going to happen next for Evan. But it came around. Like, it's better. It turns out that things are better for him. But man, this was a tough interview for me. Well, I hope that it helps some people. I've been having this idea for a minute about the possibility of decommodifying mental health care in this country, like taking it out of the realm of paying $300 an hour to see a therapist and making it more peer-to-peer, more of a mutual aid model. I mean, one of the things I love about the whole 12-step thing, outside of the whole discussion about God and all that, which I realize is hard for a lot of people and was really hard for me. But like AA is the largest anarchist organization in the world. It's decentralized. It's aggressively anti-bureaucratic. There are no lists. There are no leaders. There are no dues or fees. Like, you show up in a room, there's people, there's mediocre coffee, and someone comes to you and says, here's my phone number, call me any time of the day or night. And it doesn't cost anything. And like I said, it's anonymous. I mean, people don't think of it this way, but it is really a great mutual aid. I mean, it's some straight up Kropotkin stuff. And I would love to see, and I realize this is super ambitious and like wishing upon a star, but what if when you were having a really tough time and you called the like National Suicide Prevention Talk Line and they said, look, there's a meeting in your area tonight in 2 hours, and we'll call someone and they'll come pick you up and they'll take you there, and you'll be in a room where you're safe, and you'll be in a room where you can talk about what you're really feeling, and the only requirement is a desire to get better. And it's just an idea. And I really I think it would be a good thing. Evan, you'll hear in the interview that he's found something that works for him, and I've had other people tell me that the same thing is working for them, and I think it's great. But man, we gotta find a way to take better care of each other. Anyway, here's my interview with Evan Rowe. We're here with Evan Rowe, a drummer for Maple Stave and a lot of other triangle bands, old friend of mine. We're here in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Evan lives in Durham. Welcome, Evan.
Hi.
I've just made Evan a cup of the Crash and Ride Espresso, although we prepared it as a pour-over. It's meeting with his approval.
It's delicious. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm so glad you like it. I was just, before we started the recording, I was asking Evan about one of my favorite song titles of all time, which is a Maple Stave song, which is Let's Go, We'll Talk in Airwolf.
Yes.
There's a whole world wrapped up in that.
That is a reference to an Achewood strip in which Ray has acquired the helicopter Airwolf, which is rendered beautifully by Chris Onstad. It's very, very nice.
Yeah, that guy. I wonder if I could get him on the show.
He's around. He seems open to things.
Where does he live? Do you know?
I'm not sure, actually.
Fez knows. Fez got into like an email harassment campaign with him at some point.
That makes sense.
I think that it was Chris was going through his own struggles, and it all became clear later. But at the time, Fez was like, I ordered a T-shirt, and I didn't get it. He was really been out of shape about it.
Listen, dude.
I had another guest on recently, and we were talking about how hard it is to sell media these days. Like, oh, I have a CD, and people are like, oh yeah, what's a CD? Mm-hmm. And how hard it is to make a living. But a couple of years ago at Hopscotch, you presented me with these two beautifully rendered books of photographs and poetry that were accompanied by some media. I think it was a CD. Tell me about that project.
Oh, is that the J Kutchma?
Yes.
Yes. So Jay is an old friend he was in the Triangle for a good while. He was in a band called Red Collar. It was a great shout-along punk rock band. Dude who grew up listening to shout-along American music like Bruce Springsteen and such, and a guy who listened to a whole lot of Discord, got together and made music.
And you played drums on that project?
I played drums on his later project called J Kutchma and the 5/5, which he had started doing solo stuff, and then he wanted to put a band together to play out and record some stuff. So we did one record up in Asheville at a super nice studio called Echo Mountain, and which is incidentally where I fell in love with the Black Beauty snare drum.
They had one on the sort of staff drum.
Yeah.
What head was on it when you played it?
Just a Remo Ambassador.
I've struggled with my Black Beauty, but I guess that's probably not a discussion for
the
rest of the
maybe
world.
Later.
Yeah.
And that place is super nice. And then we put that one out with a book that just collected some stuff that we all found meaningful. And we did another one called Blue Highways that we did in an old warehouse in downtown Durham before it got turned into something else.
I'm a huge, that whole format was really cool. Like, it was a book full of who shot those photographs?
Most of them were Jay, I believe,
Yeah.
or Beth, his partner and sometime bass player. So
yeah, it was cool. It felt like a sort of the next step. Like, people are frustrated with the sort of ephemeral quality of downloaded music,
yeah,
like, streamed music or whatever. But this was like, a book that you could sit and kind of obsess over while you listen to the music, and it just felt like a real artifact of someone's process more than just a thing that someone sold.
Less a product, more going along with the creation of a thing.
Yeah.
Feels like.
Yeah. Well, you and I have known each other for a long time, and I know that coming to sit and talk about sadness was not high on your list of things. Like, man, I can't wait to do that. But I'm really grateful that you came, and I kind of want to get into it.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
You and I both struggled with anxiety and depression. We've talked about that, and we both had some real struggles with just being sad. But you've had some a lot of different attempts at ameliorating that with different treatments, and eventually you came to do this. Is it ECV or electro-convulsive?
ECT.
ECT.
Yeah. That was one of the things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, where to start? Okay, so
Well, let's start with your early life, because people don't just fall out of trees like so sad that they need to be shot.
Yes, that was actually a question on one of the intake forms about have you recently fallen out of a tree?
Really?
Because no.
Oh. Where were you born?
I was born in Lansing, Michigan.
Yeah.
Yeah. My folks my dad went to school at Michigan State for grad school.
So you were born when your dad was in grad school?
Mm-hmm.
What was he studying?
What was he studying? Education. It's a PhD. Yep. He did a lot of work with traffic design, like figuring out where cars should go and which direction and how often and how many cars that were doing it, and studies about that. So and he also taught state troopers how to drive, which is cool. So that means
it's interesting because my uncle for years has taught North Carolina state troopers how to shoot.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Yikes.
He's a marksmanship instructor.
Wow.
Yeah.
But yeah, that meant there was regular access to large rear-wheel drive automobiles. Mm-hmm. And
Are you into large rear-wheel drive automobiles?
Absolutely. I don't own any, but I'd own a minivan, but it's not rear-wheel drive. It's large-ish.
You can't really like do burnouts in the minivan.
No. It depends on how much of your band's shit is in the back.
I've had a lot of big block Mopar products through the years. I had a 72 Dart that was my last, the one that broke me, the one that made me go Honda for life.
Right.
So,
but yeah, he, pit maneuvers and stuff like that. He would teach people how to drive fast and do.
Could you do a bootlegger's turn?
I have not tried it in a very long time. I could when I was in high school pretty well.
Oh, God. I'm trying to imagine being in high school Evan's car while you were demonstrating bootlegger turns.
Well, it involved a e-brake a lot, but because it wasn't real-world drive. So his doing that, I don't know if it led into, but he also taught MSF classes, Motorcycle Safety Foundation, so teach people how to ride bikes. So when he was doing his dissertation, we moved to St. Cloud, Minnesota for a little while, and then back to Michigan, and then to Boone because he got a job at Appalachian State.
Mm-hmm.
So when we were there, he was still dealing with driver instruction and stuff like that. There was a driving range that ASU owned.
Your dad seems like a full-on motorhead.
Totally not. Just knew about it. Just learned it and went and did it. Loves motorcycles.
Yeah, you inherited the motorcycle thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I have real clear memories of sitting on CB 350s and whatnot when I was a little kid, and that metal flake orange paint and stuff like that. And there was a skid pad out there at the range, and so that was cool. I'll go out there later on and whip around.
So how old are you in Boone?
We moved there when I was 4 or 5, yeah.
How long did you stay there?
Till I was 22.
Oh, man, you were full-on West North Carolina kid. When did the anxiety start?
Huh.
Do you remember?
No. I mean, it's just
pre
how things are.
Do you have blocks of things that you don't remember from childhood?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that trauma related?
Yeah. And what was I listening to recently? Someone, some podcast or something, someone was talking about depression and memory and trauma, and said when you spend your whole young life trying to forget things, it turns out you end up having trouble remembering things later.
Yeah.
Like making new memories.
I have the opposite problem.
You just remember everything?
Oh, man.
Whoa.
It's absolutely freaky for people for the things that I remember. It's also absolutely baffling to me the things that I forget. You've talked about having some issues with connecting names and faces, like as a condition. What's that called again?
Prosopagnosia.
Okay.
Or face blindness.
Yeah.
I think there are much more profound versions of it than I have, but I don't not recognize people. I just think I know every there's like 3 faces in the world.
Right.
So everyone, my brain errs on the side of, you probably know that person, but I don't know who it is.
Yeah. I've said hi to a lot of people but I mean, let's face it, like we're sitting here as 2 white guys in black t-shirts.
Yeah.
With close cropped, like slightly longer than skull length hair. And it's, we have a look.
Yeah.
And a lot of our peers have that look. I've waved at a lot of guys in glasses, like, and they wave back like, that guy looks like one of my tribe. So.
So I'm not good with remembering people's faces.
Or memories of your early childhood. Do you know, I mean, do you have any memory of what sort of caused this, like what was going on?
It was just wasn't a relaxed place.
Yeah.
It was tense. There's a lot of anger.
Dad's got a doctorate. Is he a high achiever?
He is a high achiever.
And is he kind of relentless about that?
In a way.
Yeah.
Both my parents have doctorates now. They're both very smart.
Are they still married?
Yep.
Both my birth parents are also doctorates, but they got divorced when I was 11.
Ooh.
Which may be why I worked so hard to remember things, because it just felt like my childhood was slipping away, and I was grabbing at everything I could to try to hang on to it. Because, when they split up, it was hectic.
I imagine.
A lot of chaos. Did this manifest itself, this sort of high stress, high intensity childhood? Did you feel like you had to work really, really hard to be loved?
Yeah. Still do.
Yeah. Well,
if I'm not working, if you got time to lean.
Right. And, well, I think in adulthood, workaholism is like all the aholisms, in that you're doing everything you can to avoid having to sit in your feelings, because it's fucking hard.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, I had to work hard to be loved, and had to not screw up. So
what happens when you screw up?
It's not good.
Yeah. There was a lot of physical stuff with me as a kid. I got hit a lot.
Yeah, I got hit a lot.
Yeah. It sets you up for some anger issues, clearly, but also like a weird relationship with how you treat your body. You and I both seem to hurt ourselves a lot.
Right.
And also drive ourselves to the point of like basically exhaustion-related injuries.
I have a bruise that runs from here to here.
It's top of your thigh to mid-calf on your left leg.
Yeah, I didn't actually do anything traumatic to the outside. I pulled the muscle.
Oh, God.
And it bled from the inside.
How did you do that?
I'm not totally sure. I did play wiffle ball recently, which is dumb, in these boots. And it was muddy.
Yeah.
And that's not easy to run in. And so I kind of tightened it up, and then I think I didn't stretch out or something. But, yeah. And so I don't go to the doctor for it.
Also, yeah, that's the other thing.
My right shoulder's nearly immobilized at this point, unless I'm playing drums.
Right.
And
so one of my earlier guests on the podcast was a guy named Phil Smith, who's my actual drum teacher.
Yeah.
And he was talking about physical manifestations of anger in the body. And how the only time he didn't hurt was when he was playing drums. And he recommended this book, and I'm kind of working through it. You know, it felt like really, really well-intended advice, but I'm also always a little suspicious whenever anybody offers me a panacea, like, this will work for everything. Like, okay, well, in my life, nothing's worked for everything. So, but I'm working on it. You know, there may be a kind of repetitive motion disorder or tendinitis or like chronic pain relationship with anger. So I results. I will keep everybody posted.
Thanks. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, back in January of this year, a friend of ours died, and he'd been working on that for a while, to be honest.
Cancer?
No, booze and other things.
Suicide on the installment plan.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fell in his house, that kind of thing. And
that seems to happen. You know, ABBA's drummer was living the life that I have dreamed about for years. He was this retired drummer living in rural Spain, and by himself, though, which I'm not really keen on that.
Sure.
And apparently he fell through a plate glass door.
Yikes.
And he cut himself badly enough that he bled out before he could get to help. And
yeah,
seems to be a thing. Alcoholics falling down while isolated seems to be a pattern.
It wasn't the first time it had happened, but
it wasn't the first time.
Mm-mm.
So what was the injury?
I'm not sure. I mean, it was never. That's just the story we got. I don't know what all happened. But upon finding that out, I stared for a minute, and then I ran outside back in the backyard toward my shed, and I punched the shed as hard as I could. And as soon as I did it, I was real mad, differently, because I knew I'd done it again.
Yeah, I've hurt myself again.
And that was the 4th metacarpal that I broke that time, but I broke the 5th one the year before doing the same thing, punching the outside of a building when I was displeased with how I had played. So,
right.
Yeah, the self-injury thing is a tough habit to break.
So, my daughter, who I've adopted, who my wife and I adopted out of fairly extreme circumstances, came to us from an abusive home, a profoundly violent place. And in the first year that we had her, if you want to just like completely immerse a child with those kinds of issues in love all the time. But there's stuff they can and can't do, and you've got to set boundaries, and it's tough, But we made a decision early on that like corporal punishment was off the table,
right?
Because she'd had so much of that, and even though I grew up with it, and had to sort of deprogram my own acceptance of it as normal. When I saw what it had done to my daughter, I had a whole 180-degree turn on corporal punishment, and I don't think you should hit your kids. But
right.
But then again, like I'm only parenting my kids, so I'm only going to make my anyway.
You shouldn't hit your kids.
But when we would express dissatisfaction or sadness or anger about something that she was doing, she'd hit herself. And I mean hard. And
that's fucking heartbreaking.
Well, it's heartbreaking, but also like I was spending a lot of time like puzzling over like why is she doing that and how can I help her stop doing that? And I realized through the sort of reasoning through that, like I fell into this like rabbit hole of awareness that the self-harm thing is about just trying to be accepted, to be seen like, okay, I feel like you don't love me because that was the sort of extra credit point that my particular parent tacked on to hitting. Like, not only am I hitting you, I'm also going to withhold my love and acceptance of you. So, what I think my daughter is doing when she hits herself, she's saying, well, look, I don't love myself either. And, man, it resonated with me in a way.
I think there's an element to like I didn't really start hurting myself until I was a teenager, I guess. Right around the time I started to age out of my dad being able to hit me in the face, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I'll just take care of it for you. This is the accepted reaction to screwing up or whatever. And I knew, even if nobody else knew, I knew I was worthless. And so
self-destruction becomes just a everyday part of life, Yeah. Smoking, motorcycles.
Delightful.
I mean, and there's ways to ride motorcycles that aren't self-destructive, but I never found out what that was like.
No, you can ride as safely as you can ride on a two-wheeled vehicle that's outside.
Right.
Among a lot of large vehicles. It's an acceptable risk after a while.
Yeah. I have another friend who I love very much, who is from an also like just crazy abusive environment. And man, that dude wrecks a motorcycle. Or used to. He's off him now.
Yeah.
But he broke his fucking pelvis loose from his nearly loose from his spine, and then like got back on the motorcycle and rode home because he was out in the desert. And that's part of it, like it's weird toughness thing that we.
I decide when I die.
Right.
I decide.
Right.
I didn't die yet. Seems like I should have.
Yeah.
Did you see that Free Solo movie?
I have not.
That movie's awesome. A lot of people don't like that guy. I get it. He's not very likable. Because he's not good at being a person, really. He's purpose built.
Right.
To climb to the top of El Cap in under 3 hours.
Yeah.
By himself.
That's insane.
That's what he's here for. And he's pretty good at it. He seems nice enough, but he's not great to live around. But he seems to...
Isn't it wild when people embrace not being likable? When
you
spent your whole life as a people pleaser and you see someone who just doesn't give a fuck, like John Lurie or somebody, you're like, huh,
you're selfish.
Well, that's a little part of me that's like, wonder what that's like.
Yeah.
You know?
But he had a relationship with hurting himself and the possibility of dying that made some things clear to me.
Tell me about that.
Just that when you're a kid and you experience trauma, you don't really, I don't think you have the shades of gray that we have as grown-ups as far as injury and how close you are to death. You just sort of, your brain has to decide that this injury could cause me to die because I'm a smaller thing. And out of self-preservation, you react as much as you can to not die. As you get older, I think most people form a better, more nuanced definition of injury. But maybe as someone who experiences trauma or whatever as a kid, you just keep that relationship to it. And you come to realize that if you haven't been killed yet, you apparently are responsible for that too. You're responsible for getting hurt. What you did led to you being hurt, if you did it or someone else. And you'll be just not as afraid of dying. And that plays into suicidality. It plays into taking risks that aren't reasonable.
So it's about that element of control.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that guy totally seems to have decided he dies when he dies.
Yeah.
He's going to do it. But not that he's going to kill himself. That's not the end of the movie. Right. But it is gorgeous. The photography is just stunning. Yeah. And growing up in the mountains and climbing, it was like...
So you climbed too? I
did when I was a kid. Not ever like that, but there's not much else to do in Boone. Just go out to the rocks and go up them.
Yeah. So you started riding motorcycles young?
Not officially. Like, I never had one growing up. And
right.
I don't think my parents would have countenanced that. I rode other people's dirt bikes sometimes. I rode with my dad when I was real little, and then not again until after college. So,
right. Seems like you were kind of hell-bent to get out of the house pretty young, though.
Yeah.
Did you go away to college?
I did for a year.
Where'd you go?
Warren Wilson College.
Where's that?
Swannanoa. Boone was too big.
Yeah, right.
It's outside Asheville. When I went, there were 450 students. It is a magical place.
What did you study? It's college. Drinking.
And then I went back to Appalachian the next year.
Yeah.
I left after that year. It was too small, it turned out. I felt too visible. Yeah, I would go back to Warren Wilson now for like, they do an MFA in creative writing that would kick my ass and be incredible. But
are you writing a lot?
No. I need the ass kick.
Right.
But yeah, so I went there and then I moved back to Boone, but I didn't live at home anymore.
At any point during this time, are you seeking any kind of like therapy or treatment or?
Yeah. So, I was thinking about this the other day. I think I was probably 11 or 12. First time I went to a doctor.
What sent you to the doctor?
I was just a mess. I was just super sad, and I wasn't doing as well in school, and I was...
Was it your dad's idea? Or because
it was both my parents, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
My dad was not a particularly distant guy. He wasn't he was present. He just had an unhealthy relationship with work and
anger.
And anger came by it honestly from his dad, and it just so. But yeah, we went there, and then I went to some kind of 6th-ish grade dance right afterward and felt real weird.
Yeah.
So I went to a psychologist.
What was that first encounter with therapy like? I mean, was it productive or?
No.
It
was with my folks there, and
oh God.
So that happened a few more times. And
was there like a event that made them say we gotta get Evan to a doctor?
I don't remember.
You don't remember?
Mm-mm. But I kept seeing him off and on through high school. And eventually I ended up in the hospital.
When was that?
My senior year, yeah.
Of high school?
Mm-hmm.
And was there an event that led to hospitalization? Or
I was threatening to kill myself.
Right. When did you first start having thoughts of self-harm? Or is it omnipresent?
Yeah, I think it was always there. I just found different ways to do it.
Yeah.
Then it was mostly, it had just been distilled down into scratching the skin off my arms and legs.
Yeah.
Just my fingernails. Because, I would do dumb stuff and drink too much and do dumb drugs. And
so you were pretty invested in intoxicants in high school?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I went with a friend my first year of high school. He had bad ideas all the time, so...
Man, I was that friend.
His idea this time was to break into some places in the middle of the night.
So was his family situation pretty fucked? Yeah.
That poor guy.
Where's he now, do you know?
I don't know. Don't know. We lost touch after getting arrested.
Okay.
Stuff.
This is the night you got arrested that we're talking about, or?
No, this is just an earlier, how did we get to that? I was getting to it with the intoxicants.
Right.
Yeah. So we broke into a bunch of apartments, a bunch of people who have guns, of course, because I'm in Boone, North Carolina, which is a smart idea to be a 13, 14-year-old.
Right.
Breaking in places that are armed, stealing their guns,
Wow.
putting a rifle down the leg of your pants and hoofing it across King Street as you run away. Because we didn't bring anything big enough.
Right.
We'll hide this.
Right.
A couple weeks go by. Couldn't figure out how to fire one of the handguns.
Jesus.
We're in his half basement crawl space filled with dirt thing, trying to shoot it into a mound of dirt, and me and the other friends leave. We're like, this is not going to work out, dude. And we hear a distant pop as we leave.
Oh God.
But he was alive.
Yeah.
And then he talked to the cops eventually, and the cops hauled us in. And right before I went to face all that stuff, I huffed a lot of butane. So that's how my life was going.
Yeah, this is all.
And then my dad sat across the table while I had to tell the cop what happened.
Right.
It was good stuff.
So
I was just trying to kill it, just whatever in my head.
What's funny is that when the cops run up on kids like us, they're always like, "Yeah, they're from good homes." It's like, motherfucker, you come live in it.
Right.
There's I wish I could remember her name right now, but there's a physician from San Francisco who has opened a clinic focusing on treating kids with childhood trauma, and she sets up this whole. I saw her talk online as a TED Talk, which I realize is there's a lot of garbage, pop psychology and TED Talks, but I think this one's fairly important. She talks about the long-term effects of early childhood trauma or acute childhood trauma on health and well-being and ability to form relationships, but serious health outcomes on kids who have these traumatic childhoods. And she sets up this sort of she walks this liberal white audience into this sense of complacency, I think, by talking about how she's working with inner city kids who are facing issues of poverty and neglect around economic hardship.
Right.
But then, like, she swings around in the last few minutes about, like, by the way, I put my clinic in the poor part of town, but it isn't just poor kids who have trauma. And I don't know, man, I would jump on a hand grenade to protect that woman. She's an amazing physician, and she's done a lot of great work. And I'll put a link to that TED Talk in the show notes. But, yeah, you know.
So, yeah. I'm sorry, I diverted. I do that a lot.
No, it's okay. We're not doing a TED Talk here.
Right.
We have longer than 10 minutes.
So yeah, I had moved on to just instead of acting out so much, I was just acting inward and scratching myself up and cutting myself, and lots of hesitation cuts and tests to see how far down a blade has to go and stuff like that.
And you're hiding that from your parents?
Mm-hmm. I wore a lot of long sleeves. It was the 90s. A lot of big T-shirts.
Right.
Flannels.
Yeah.
And eventually it got real bad, and I was I felt I was out of options. And I had friends in high school who were really good friends. And they said, you need to figure something out. You need to go somewhere if you have to go somewhere.
Right.
So I went to hospital. And
how long were you in the hospital?
Just under a month.
This is right in the middle of your senior year?
Yeah. Spring, yeah. And that was tough. And I'd already been taking medication at that point. But
what meds do you remember?
I took Prozac at one point.
How did that work for you?
No.
Prozac has a weird effect on some people. Makes them really manic. And then, but they feel better for the first time in a long time.
Sure, because you have energy.
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's a lot of anti-meds people. I'm not anti-meds, but I'm also I'm anti-throwing meds at the problem and not really monitoring.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's like any other condition.
Yeah, so you're in the hospital. Meds aren't working.
No, they threw a bunch more meds at it. I left there really heavily medicated because I was seeing stuff, and
you were
I had some hallucination stuff happening. I had some small breaks from what was really happening in front of me.
But you were also kind of on this fairly heady mix of inhalants and adolescence too. So
true. Was that year? I think I had mostly stopped everything by that year in high school.
My first go at sobriety was then. I was in a very similar situation, and I quit using drugs in the hopes that it would fix me, but it didn't.
No, turns out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was describing some things that made them worry.
Yeah.
I was on watch all the time. I was acting out. I was still self-harming and stuff in the hospital, and so I was being put in restraints. I was being given injections while I'm strapped to the floor. Mm-hmm. And I left there on Haldol, so I mean, I was.
So they were treating your depression as psychosis.
At the end there, yeah.
Yeah. So they probably diagnosed you as borderline personality disorder.
They did.
I'm guessing.
Good one. It's not true, but yeah.
Well, I'm not actually. This is not. I'm not pretending to be a medical professional.
Right.
Here. I'm just relating my own experience.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, we have a lot in common that I didn't even know about.
Did you take Haldol?
No.
Yeah.
The great thing about having divorced parents is you could sort of flee treatment by going to the other parent. I've bounced back and forth between the two houses to just avoid being controlled.
Yeah.
When did you start playing music?
At all. Early. Like the first time they let me have anything was 4th grade. So
yeah,
I played violin.
Violin.
Well, you had to. So, and then I played cello.
Yeah.
As quick as I could.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
because I was
It's
no good.
You're the fourth person I've interviewed now for the podcast for whom cello was. I'm beginning to become convinced that cello causes depression.
Maybe.
So,
It sounds better than violin, though.
yeah.
Especially when you're not good at it.
Right. When did you get to drums, though?
So I guess it was the next year or something, and you could be in band, but you couldn't start in percussion because everybody just wants to play drums. So you had to have a legitimate instrument first.
It's funny that you would use that phrase.
Well, putting words in their mouths.
No. My mom, the opera singer, went to her grave denying that drums were a musical instrument.
It's accompaniment.
Yeah.
I played clarinet for about a year. Also terrible. And then I played percussion, and I built a drum kit out of a large cardboard box with some tape on it for a snare drum, practice pad for a rack tom.
I had an algebra book myself.
Nice.
Yeah.
I had a...
That's all I ever used that algebra book for, by the way.
Nice. I had the base of a globe strung up with a rope from the ceiling for a cymbal, like one of those round bases. I had a old Tara Page off calendar that went jingle for a hi-hat.
Mm-hmm.
So...
How old were you when you did this?
6th grade or so.
I was expecting you to say 27. I was in Cop Shoot
That's
Cop.
It's at home.
So, drums helped me a lot.
Yeah.
Because I was dealing with some issues with the sort of sine wave of bipolar feelings, and drums helped me channel the mania really well. It was hard to stop playing drums.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you had that same experience or not.
Oh yeah, I would just play until I got yelled at, pretty much.
So it seems like senior year of high school is a real low point. You're institutionalized, and then you went off to this nurturing small college, and that seems to have helped a lot.
I don't know. I went to the hospital that spring.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. From Warren Wilson, so
yeah,
that was a different hospital.
Same diagnoses?
I think it did stay that way for that one, but I got different drugs. I was an adult then, so it was a very different facility.
Yeah.
I ended up on a lot of lithium that time for some reason. That's a good one.
Yeah, that's
mostly stayed away from the antipsychotics though. So the tardive dyskinesia went away, where I couldn't stop moving my jaw to the side.
Wait, you had that as a side effect of
Haldol, yeah.
Yeah.
I remember playing a show right after with a high school band.
What band was that?
That band was called... We were called Copeless, I believe, which is the name of a childhood doll a friend of ours had.
Really?
Which is an incredible name for a doll.
No kidding.
But we were playing outside in Horn in the West Park, and I can't stop moving my jaw and my neck. I'm like this, trying to play drums.
Oh, man.
All drugged up.
When did you sort of... It seems like in the time that I've known you, you haven't really had to deal with being diagnosed as being borderline personality disorder. They're just sort of tackling your depression.
I've seen the same doctor now for, 15 plus years.
How did you find this guy?
My normal GP that I had said, I know a doctor, you should go talk to him. Because I wasn't seeing anybody for a while. And he was just more patient or something. Just didn't take what, I had those 3 hospital stays.
What was the third?
Same place next spring.
So you were back at Boone?
Yeah, outside Boone.
Right.
I don't know if the hospital's there anymore. Anybody who was in Boone in the 90s knew Baxter. Baxter was a guy who walked around the street a lot.
Right.
He was in while I was in, which is cool.
Yeah.
I would hold his extra smokes for him sometimes when we go out to the shed to smoke.
Right. You don't smoke anymore, though?
Sadly, no.
I have to explain to people who don't understand the allure of nicotine.
Yeah.
That it's not really like the Great Wall of China emotionally. It does not like, something like heroin that, or even cocaine that kind of shuts down the sadness, but it's sort of like the great speed bump of China, in that at least it slows it down a little bit. Like nicotine is this incredibly alluring thing for just like blunting it's the airbag of trauma.
Yeah. It just it doesn't make you feel great. It just makes you feel better.
Right.
Plus you take a break.
Right.
Whatever it is you're banging your head up against, you're just...
Well, I feel like we both sort of share this like resolute defiance that we inherited as children who were kind of disregarded by a narcissistic parent, that we needed this, that smoking is perfect for, like, you know what? I'm going to take a smoke break.
Yeah.
It's a way of asserting a right to your selfhood.
Yep.
And it's perfect for people who find us inconvenient, because we're going to go outside and do something self-destructive.
Right. But yeah, sorry, Baxter.
Baxter.
He was cool. He was a schizophrenic, and I'm pretty sure he was.
Right.
He just smoked like 3 cigarettes at a time and
right.
run out of hands. So that was a cool place. And
it's the third hospital stay. And you sort of bring this to your GP, who's now still your doctor. He says,
right.
I don't think you're schizophrenic. I don't think you're bipolar. Or sorry, I don't think you're borderline personality disorder.
Yeah. I mean, my GP, she was, I asked her about it. Because I was already, I was seeing my now lovely wife, Nicole, at that point. And she said, you're still sad. You're not like you were back then. I don't think. I didn't know her when I was super sick, but you could try and address this. Maybe they'd see people for it. So I asked our doctor. She sent me to current doctor, and he just started from zero. And I was like, "You are depressed. That's clear."
Right.
Anxiety didn't come in for a couple years until I eventually described things, and it just. As much as I dislike talking on the phone or whatever, that situation is 100 times harder. Even if I've known the guy for 15 years, I can spend 5 minutes of silence trying to pick my next words to tell him.
I understand that completely.
So it takes a while to pull out of me these other things that are going on. It took a while to pull out the fact that I clearly have post-traumatic stress disorder.
Right.
So... Eventually, we went through a bunch of different medications again too.
Mm-hmm. This is still your GP?
No, this is the psychiatrist that she sent me to.
Your GP referred you to a psychiatrist who gave you the time to really describe what was going on, as opposed to sort of treating you as a line item in a medical chart.
It's a slightly less emergent situation. It's not as acute. Which isn't how it feels to the person, but...
When did you start seeing this psychiatrist?
Probably about 15 years.
Okay. And this is still the person sort of who's in charge of your...
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you're married to Nicole?
Mm-hmm. It's our anniversary today.
Today?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man, how many years?
16. So, gosh, I've been seeing him longer than that.
Jesus Christ, it's just... I feel like when I talk to... people who are in long-term relationships who struggle with depression, and they found a partner who doesn't dismiss it or ridicule it, it's just such a victory. I said it before on this show that my wife saved my life by being patient. My first wife just could not make time or place in her life for me to not be okay. And man, it didn't go well.
No.
Nicole's your first wife.
Yep. my lovely first wife, as I like to refer to her.
You've been married for 16 years, and you've been seeing the same GP and psychologist for 15 years. It sounds like...
I think maybe I saw the GP before we were... Definitely saw the GP and psychiatrist before we were married. So longer even.
Yeah.
The passage of time is weird.
Okay. But meeting Nicole was... Or marrying Nicole was sort of concurrent with this decision to kind of take as active a hand in your... in battling your depression as you could, it sounds like. And to also kind of get away from these early diagnoses that weren't correct for you.
Right.
What's happening with your relationship with your dad during this time?
We're okay.
Yeah.
My dad changed a lot. Probably around the time I went to the hospital a few times.
The third time?
A few times. Just in and around that, I think it was pretty frightening to him.
Yeah. Has he ever sort of taken any responsibility for...
Well,
has he ever
we haven't
acknowledged
talked about it much.
that his anger may have affected you profoundly?
I'm not sure if there's been an explicit conversation. I think there's been a little bit, but not...
My mom was in hospice care when she finally owned it.
Yeah.
And then I was just like, yep. Like, I don't think we ever really got right. Like, I tried, but I just wasn't ready.
If you can.
Yeah.
You can't be that person again, and hopefully they're not
Ever
the same person.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to access those feelings and whatever construct you might have had that led you to think that was how things should go right then.
Yeah.
But he's a... he is a less angry person.
You think being a grandparent helped?
It does.
Sure changed my mom.
Not taking steroids helps. He
Does
has
he have steroids?
Crohn's disease, and he has most of my life.
Fuck.
And they treated that with prednisone every day of his life for I don't know how many years.
I would rather
Holy God.
do crystal meth than ever take prednisone again.
I feel like a damn hell-ass king for about a week, but that's about as long as you want to do that, probably.
Man,
I don't
it
think
takes
anyone
me
around me likes me much.
48 hours on prednisone before I'm nearly psychotic. I can't believe they just give that to people and don't say, hey, by the way, you may have explosive outbursts of rage, and you may tip over into a kind of aggrieved narcissism. Like prednisone is bad shit, man.
It's rough. So he wasn't taking that as much anymore. And just when you're depressed, you find something that works.
Right.
If what seems to be working is treating your kids this way, making your house a scary place.
Yeah.
Because you get up the next day.
How many siblings do you have?
One sister.
Yeah. How's she doing?
She's good. She's going to have twins in a couple months.
Amazing.
Yikes. She has one kid.
I'm a twin.
You are? That's right.
Yeah. So you meet Nicole.
I meet Nicole. I met Nicole my second year before I started at Appalachian, when I was just up there visiting.
Right. Was there a sense of sort of a desire on your behalf to like, okay, I've got to get a handle on this because this person is important enough to me to
definitely
be a functioning partner in a relationship?
Yeah, and that came because we knew each other for a long time before we dated.
Were you taking the lithium when you met Nicole, or was...
Probably, yeah.
And at some point you made a decision like, I've got to find something that works better than this, so that I can be a good partner for this person.
Yeah. I mean, there was probably about 10 years there where I was probably just refilling some random antidepressant, Prozac or something, over and over, and not really seeing anybody, and self-medicating a lot otherwise, and just being in college and that age, not really focusing on this stuff.
When you say self-medicating, you drinking?
Yeah, I was drinking a lot.
Yeah. You still drink?
Not as much.
Yeah, well.
Yeah.
I mean, we're getting older.
Yeah. But I do it much more consciously now.
You were drinking on SSRIs? How does that go? How did that go?
I don't know any different now.
Yeah. No, I mean,
Yeah,
then,
I know.
like you were drinking heavily while taking Prozac. That's not always a great combination. I have a lot of experience with it because my times of self-destructive behavior and my times of actually treating my depression are
Sure.
off and on, like it's binary. I'm either taking meds or I haven't drank in a long time. But yeah. So it seems like you saw some progress with your new GP and new psychiatrist.
We went through a bunch of different medications.
How did you get to the point where ECT was the next step?
And nothing was working.
Right.
And I was making bad plans.
You mean contemplating self-harm?
Yeah.
Yeah. This was before the birth of your daughter?
No. In 2016 is when things just got worse and worse.
Yeah.
And we were messing around with different medications, and that takes, you come off of one for about 4 weeks. You have to taper down, and then you take another one, and it's 2 to 6 weeks before anything happens, and then they can start raising the dosage.
Fucking roller coaster. That's what that sounds like.
And so...
Man, thank God for Nicole. I just got to say.
Just why I'm alive.
Yeah, that she stuck with you. Like I said, I've been in a relationship with a partner for whom mental health was quackery and voodoo, and she didn't understand it, and I don't think I could have gone through that process with her ever. So,
right.
I mean, yeah. So at some point with meds not really making a dent, your psychiatrist said, "Let's do this other thing."
Yeah, I just asked about options.
Right.
I asked if there was anything else we could do. I said, I really don't want to go check in somewhere yet.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm having shit ideas, I think is how Maria Bamford puts it.
Tell me, I mean, if it's not too painful to revisit, like, what is that thought process like for you?
What do you mean?
Well, the thing that I've talked about a few times is that suicide for people who really struggle with depression for a really long time is an abstraction that, like, is always kind of hanging as an option in the background. Like, well, you're always thinking, well, I'm not going to do that. And then there's a point where it passes from an abstraction and a non-possibility into an actual option where you think, well, I'm not going to do that, am I?
Yeah. Yeah, it was always an option. But it kind of changed slightly from just being an option in the back of my head to being an impulse decision.
Right.
To being something, oh, you can do it now.
That's what I'm asking about.
Do it right now. And I was still not quite sick enough to
do it.
Do it right then. But
right.
I managed after a while to notice that I was doing that.
Do you have firearms in the house?
No.
Were you raised with guns?
No.
Thank God for that, man.
Yep.
I mean, I was raised with guns. And I'm in a place now where, it's not really an issue, but there was definitely a time in my life where I was too poor to afford firearms, which is fortunate. Mm-hmm. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's not to say that I didn't go to friends' houses and find out what
the gun situation was.
Yeah. But it went to that, this could be an impulse thing. Hey, that's probably not good. And so the way my brain handled that was to just start planning. Like, okay, we all know you're going to do this eventually.
Right.
So what do you need to do to make that as non-shitty as possible for everyone? And eventually I admitted that to Nicole, and that was the end of that being a slow process.
Yeah. Well, she's not going to treat it like
she's probably not going to
a casual thing.
Get on board.
Right. She's going to send up a flare and ask for help from everyone.
So she was in the doctor's office with me too when we were, what can we do? So we I went and we made an appointment at UNC Hospital to talk to them about ECT, and went and did that. And
what's that like?
It's tough. It's scary and weird every time. And as someone who sees most of this as just yet another personal failing, it is a constant reminder of the impact your shittiness has on the people who love you enough to do anything for you, including take you to this over and over again. I mean, the hundreds at this point of doctor's appointments that Nicole has driven me to and from because I will either be under anesthesia or otherwise. And my friends, bandmates, and sitting in a shitty waiting room watching daytime TV while I am in back. And
does it help?
It did. And
it did, or it does?
It did help me.
Okay, but you're no longer...
I'm not doing ECT.
Okay.
Because after a while it didn't work.
Yeah.
I did a lot of treatments. And that has profound memory effects.
You know that your friends and bandmates, they do these things because they love you.
I know.
And that's not conditional, right? I mean, that's the thing that we learned from that narcissistic parent, right? That their love can be withdrawn.
Right, and that's
the thing they teach us. But I can tell you, from experiences with the adult friendships that I've developed with my bandmates and my wife, and because my wife we're really close friends too, that the true nature of the affection that we have for each other and the bonds that we form is that it's not conditional, and it's not dependent upon it's not their feelings about you are so independent of the way that you're feeling about yourself.
Well, part of how depression is manifested in me, at least, is a narcissistic insistence by my brain that I know what everyone else is thinking.
Yeah.
I mean, I had to know what they were thinking before I answered when I was a kid, to get it right.
Right.
So I know this is a giant pain in the ass, and why can't Evan get his shit together, and what is this treatment number 55? And at the same time, intellectually, I know that that's not how it works. I know that. I know that I would turn over a train for any of my friends if that would help a little bit. $5 to park in the UNC hospital parking deck is not something they're going to hound me for later.
Right.
It's because I couldn't find my wallet because I can't walk.
Yes.
It's not a big deal, but it's just a constant reminder of your brokenness, and you are not seen as a hero. You're not rolling down through that lobby in a wheelchair as a survivor. You're not triumphing over anything.
I mean, that's the insane voice in your head that doesn't love you, that's telling you that you're not a hero, that you're not
There's
triumphing.
part of that. But there's also just an invisibility to this disease, an invalidity to it.
We gotta outlive this stupid boomer concept that we're all fucking Ayn Randian superheroes that are the star of our own little movie, because it's fucking killing people. It's killing people like you and me every day.
Yep.
And we get this idea that because we're not a hero, we're some kind of fucking burden. There was a period of time when I was so depressed that I made a hobby out of reading other people's suicide notes, which I know it just sounds absolutely insane.
You ever Googled a suicide note?
Oh, fuck.
To see what's in it? Just to make sure you're hitting all
the points.
Like a bulleted list?
Yeah.
Yeah, dude.
The last one I really studied in depth was Kurt Cobain's, because it just resonated so strongly with me that this idea that because you're not perfect, there's this idea I had that because I wasn't perfect that I was a burden on the people around me, and that my absence would be a gift to them. Which, when I saw someone else say that, put that in words, I was like, oh no.
Right.
Like, I see myself here. And when I'm doing okay, which thank God is most of the time these days, I know that is just not true. That the people who value me in their lives want me to be here, and that my, as you put it, brokenness is just part of what they love about me. And it's part of what makes me the musician that I am, and it's part of what makes it possible for me to do the things that I do well. But, man, and the worst of it, there's this part of you thinking, I'm tired of dragging the people that care about me through this.
Yep.
But, man.
No, so, yeah, I did a lot of ECT treatments.
Yeah.
It's just kind of hard on your body. It's, there's bad memory effects. I don't remember most of 2 years or so, 2016, 2017. It's just, there's a lot of me saying to Nicole, have I seen this? She's like, you've seen this. I'm like, okay, I like it again.
That's a terrible news for you about who's president.
Yeah, right now.
How come you never forget that part?
What the? Yeah. And it's general anesthesia every time. Well, it's very short-lived. Anesthesia.
Do you use drugs now?
Not much, no. I take so many drugs every morning that
I don't use drugs anymore, but every now and then I have to get general anesthesia for something, and I'm like, oh, fuck yeah.
It's one of the greatest things that's ever happened to me.
It's terrible how good it is.
The taste of propofol that it makes in my mouth, even though it's going in through a line in my arm. Mm-hmm. I just get this taste, and then I have my oxygen mask on, which is also one of the greatest things in the world. Right. Pure oxygen pumping into you. I don't know why we don't get to do that all the time.
If you think you're wealthy enough, you can.
Yeah, that's probably true. But that just moment where you can stop trying.
Yep. Count backwards from 10. Like, okay.
8.
Right. But,
But, yeah, so I would do that, and then they administer the electrodes in different, they put the electrodes on in different places on your head, depending on how they want to treat it, and induce a seizure. And that seizure, if I remember correctly, can aid in the production of more available serotonin.
Right. Man, talk about squeezing blood from a stone.
Exactly. This is what you have to go to. And so I didn't kill myself.
Yes.
It worked. It changed how I looked at things. It took a while. And it was 3 times a week for a few weeks, and then a couple times a week, and then tapered off, and I was on a maintenance thing. But close to, in December of 2017, I was just about back to where I'd been, and we ramped up the ECT treatments back to a treatment protocol or whatever the first one is. So I was going more often, but it just broke down in talking to the psychiatrist there one day before treatment. Said I have to do something. I don't know if I'm going to make it.
Yeah.
So that's when we had talked about EMDR.
I don't know what that's a kind of therapy, right?
Yeah, eye movement desensitization.
Yeah, I do know what that is. All right, I remember. Sorry, I blanked on it for a second, but it's off. They're using that for a lot of PTSD patients.
Yeah.
Have you done that?
No, not yet. It's not as much an acute treatment, I don't think. And they also have TMS, transcranial magnetic stimulation or something at UNC Hospital.
Have you talked about the ketamine thing too?
No, I'm getting to that.
Yeah.
And the Dr. Plato told me it's probably that transcranial magnetic stuff is probably not going to help you right now. We've already gone to the bigger stuff with you.
Right.
But there's a clinic in Raleigh that does ketamine treatment. Mm-hmm. And they were doing some tests at UNC Hospital before the recent medications came out, doing some trials of nasal spray, ketamine and stuff, and there'd been stories for years about how it helped.
Right.
So I went there, that December, and I went in feeling one way and came out feeling a different way.
Better?
Yeah. I didn't want to kill myself.
That's fantastic.
It just didn't, and doesn't right now. It does not present itself in any way other than an incorrect, abstract ending to this.
The way people who were normally depressed would sort of think about it, right?
I could kill myself.
Yeah.
That's not what I'm after.
Right.
Whereas that's not what I'm after wouldn't have come before that. And it was the first treatment.
That's amazing.
I didn't feel good.
Right. But not as
still
bad.
Massively unhappy, but
yeah.
in addition to Nicole and my friends and family, that might have saved my life.
Yeah.
That can happen. And it doesn't work for everybody, but
apparently nothing does, which is a fucking shame.
Its ability to just turn off that one aspect of this disease was pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah. So that's where you're at now.
Yeah.
When was that treatment?
Well, that was in December of 2017.
Mm-hmm.
And they follow a protocol that the Mayo Clinic did at one point in a study where there's a few, and just like 6 in the first 2 weeks or something. And then you ramp down. And there's not really any data on maintenance therapy with it, but I've been going roughly every 3 weeks.
What is the ketamine? They do a nasal spray?
No, it's a infusion, so it's IV.
Do you just get wasted?
Not wasted.
Because my understanding of ketamine is that when it's done recreationally, this is a different titration or something.
Much lower dose than the recreational or anesthetic use. Because I had it as part of the anesthetic cocktail, some too at UNC. It's a dissociative anesthetic, which means it's sort of
the twilight sleep thing.
Yeah, but there's not really any pain
meds
dealing with. It's just it takes your consciousness somewhere else a little.
Okay.
And there have been a few treatments where one awesome side effect is that music sounds incredible because you have nothing to do for about 45 minutes.
What are you listening to?
For a while there, I was listening to Maserati just almost all the time.
Yeah. That drummer
he's one of my favorite drummers.
Man, I miss
him a lot.
For about 3 years, I just missed him every day. I would think about this absence in my life that Jerry left. For those of you who don't know the band Maserati, they're an instrumental rock band from Athens, Georgia. And Jerry Fuchs is the drummer that would have probably eclipsed even John Bonham as he got older. He was a machine. He was the most amazing drummer I've ever seen. And he died in a terrible accident.
It was unbelievable how good he was.
He fell down an elevator shaft.
Yeah.
Which
he had a lot of work to do still.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had just seen him for the first time a couple of years back at South by Southwest. I got to stand right next to him in one of the shows that's in the Fred Weaver thing online, that little short.
Yeah.
Gerald Fuchs Silverstein or whatever it is.
The one-handed fill. That
I've been chasing for years and years and years.
I gave up. I'm never going to be able to play that. It was a hard day to realize that, but it was such a huge relief.
It's good to grow up.
My bandmates could finally stop listening to me try to play that fill over and over and over again, fucking it up live. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. I was listening to a lot of Maserati. I still do that song. I got way into Perfect From Now On by Bill to Spill. That's a fun hippie music.
Yeah.
There's a lot of parts on that record.
Yeah.
Good grief. But it's not, you don't get wasted. You can get a little outside yourself And after about 45 minutes, you come back totally.
They taper you off it.
It's just over, and it gets out of your system right then.
Metabolize it, yeah.
And then you go home and you're a little tired, but that's it. It's not... ECT would have days of muscle aches because you have a seizure.
Yeah, no kidding.
So
yeah, I can imagine.
And you couldn't eat. I could never eat. You can't eat anything for general.
The ECT thing, it makes me wonder if, I've often thought that besides the sort of self-destructive impulse, the sort of kind of demonic combination is that when you're doing things like riding motorcycles too fast or rock climbing or whatever, that there's this also that huge surge of adrenaline releases some serotonin too, much the same way it sounds like the ECT does, that like it can kind of bump those dopamine levels a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that if you're depressed and you get addicted to that, you end up with these behaviors that we call thrill-seeking or daredevil behaviors. I know that growing up in a town next to a large infantry military base, I saw a lot of really crazy behavior by guys who were probably suffering from PTSD and just trying to find ways to simulate that adrenaline surge of combat by riding motorcycles at 160 miles an hour or walking on building ledges or whatever. It's the kind of way to... and they talk about people who've tried to commit suicide and failed by like jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge, that said right before they hit the water they thought, this was a terrible mistake.
Yeah.
They finally feel better for a minute. And I think that there may be something about sort of clarifying and focusing effect of that huge surge of adrenaline, and it sort of breaks the miasma for a minute,
Maybe, yeah. ECT was a weird one just because its effects were, it's not like SSRI or SNRI that takes weeks, but it's a cumulative effect, and it's not, you don't really feel better that day.
Oh, great. So
you feel like worse. You feel real tired. You feel real achy.
Yeah, you feel like you've been hit by a truck.
Yeah. But it helped.
Yeah. And you continue to do the ketamine infusions.
Yeah. That facility is approved to do the treatments with the new esketamine nasal spray, which might be covered by insurance as a medication because ketamine is not. It is I
love for-profit healthcare.
It's an off-label treatment. Anyone can give it to you. They can give it to you for anything they write it for, but insurance is not going to pay. And it's not approved for that, probably because they couldn't patent that drug.
Because it's been around long enough.
It's a generic.
Oh, for God's sakes.
And so they split the molecule in half.
Right.
Called it esketamine. It's, the way doctors have put it is it's almost guaranteed to not work as well, just because it's only half the molecule. Can't remember if it's the right-handed or left-handed side, but maybe the other side helps. But
I think the years of sort of construction projects that you've had, in my experience as a carpenter, are going to be really handy when we build those guillotines for health company CEOs, health insurance company executives. Because, they've got more blood on their hands than... think about the people who could be helped by this therapy who can't get it because it's not covered by insurance, and they're going to fucking kill themselves.
Yeah.
And it's just not like maybe this might happen, or that's sort of an abstract notion. It's gonna fucking happen. It'll probably happen today.
Yeah.
Someone will die because they couldn't get that therapy.
I will hand you $450.
Yeah.
You can pay me back or not.
Right. Yeah.
Insurance will pay for the part of the doctor visit, I think. So we get a little money back if I submit it. But it's an old drug. Hopefully the nasal spray I mean, that it got through all those trials is good because it took a long time. So I'm really hopeful that opens it up to more people. Makes it a little less like a sketchy, weird thing I go do in an office park in Raleigh.
Right.
Every time you say ketamine to someone, they look at you funny.
Right. Yeah, if they could patent it, they'll brand it with a name like, like Cymbalta or.
Man, I cannot remember what the name of the nasal spray is. It's something goofy.
It'll be catchy, and it'll be marketable, and someone will make $1 billion off of it.
Fine, I guess. Better that than more pain meds, maybe.
Yeah.
Although I guess it's pain med.
So it seems like you're doing a little better these days.
Yeah. I gotta not break my hand anymore.
Yeah, well, that's we're gonna talk about that.
That was one of those moments of clarity. I was like, you're done. That's all.
Well, I'm working on a regimen that I'm going to share with people as soon as I feel like I've kind of got it. A lot of us who've suffered from depression also suffer from outbursts of rage, and I think that there's a combination of journaling, which you and I are more likely to do than meditation or yoga. I want to do yoga, but like I'm going to have to one day admit that it's going to take someone putting a gun to my head to make me actually fucking do it. So, but yeah, I think that there's a way to handle the rage, and I'm working on it, and I'll keep you posted.
Thanks.
So, how old's your daughter now?
6.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Last night, right before I called you, I mentioned that the honeysuckle was out because I'd just been in the front yard throwing a baseball to her in her new glove that she has for t-ball, and she caught it on the first try and continued to catch it over and over. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't stop throwing it to her. You got to go to bed.
Yeah.
Nope. It was, yeah. And so I tried that happened too. That also happened. The shitty thoughts and my estimation of myself are real, maybe not as valid, but they're real. But this is real too. Right. And I had a direct impact on it. I was actually throwing the ball. I wasn't watching her be amazing. It was
right.
So that was good.
Yeah.
Then she's taken to playing the drums and writing out her parts. So because she found my notes.
That's fantastic.
So she'll label all the drums A, B, C, D.
Yeah.
And put pieces of paper on them, and then write down the order in which you hit them.
She's playing drums.
No, yeah, she's hitting drums.
Yeah,
she just found the pages of part A, part B, part C.
Right.
She's like, okay, cool. This is how it works.
My kid's she doesn't like loud noises, so we don't get to play drums together much. But I'm hoping that there'll be a time when she's more comfortable with that.
Yeah.
Well, when we come to the last part of these, I like to do a series of questions that I've been working on.
Yeah.
You're probably familiar with them now because
some of them at least.
Well, they're changing too.
Cool.
They've changed a lot, and normally I have notes. I don't know what possessed me to dive into this interview with no notes, except that I felt a real urgency for us to talk because I know some of what you've been through, and I wanted to get right into it. But let's do the questions if you want. All right. So first question: what is your favorite meal that you've ever had?
Nicole and I ate at Chez Panisse once.
Really?
That was really incredible.
I've never been there.
It was no joke, dude.
I think
they're famous for a reason.
I think that one of the reasons I asked that question is because of all the things that can kind of break me out of my melancholy and sort of help me be grateful for a moment when someone puts something amazing to eat in front of me. Mm-hmm. I feel really good about life.
Yeah.
What did you have at Chez Panisse?
Most of it I don't remember. It was just something about the improbability of Nicole and I ending up there.
Right.
In that state to begin with, and then in that restaurant. And
when was this?
2010, 11.
Yeah. So still fairly.
Yeah. The other answer is anything I've ever eaten in the woods.
Yeah, that's funny. That's my second as a tour experience I had. Where I was in France and had a meal that was my first meal in France, and it was just so outstanding, and the moment was so magical. But after that, has a lot of like fish that we had caught cooked over a fire that we had made.
Right.
You
ride a motorcycle all day and
right.
end up in the woods camping and cook a steak over a fire.
Yeah.
Eat it with a pocket knife.
Right.
It's really something.
Yeah. What is the time that you've been braver than you ever thought you could be?
That's a tough one. I guess asking Nicole for help.
Yeah, man. That's big.
Yeah. Saying you can't fix it and asking someone else to help you fix it
takes a
can be
lot of
tough.
courage. The courage to surrender is the thing that's really alien to people who've never been depressed.
Maybe, yeah.
It's, but man, to get out of your own way and say, hey, I need some help is truly remarkable. I got to say, I'm really grateful for the silence that, like, this good. I have a friend who listens to podcasts at like 1.5 times speed because he's too busy to listen to the podcast normally.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you, man? That's the most like instant grits way of listening to a podcast I could possibly imagine. Like the fact that that you don't feel the need to fill that silence to me is a mark of respect.
Oh, I feel the need.
Yeah. Well, you don't feel it pointlessly, which is I really appreciate you taking the time to really think about it. So. Third question, of all the things you've lost, what do you regret losing the most?
A couple of years of memories from
Yeah.
when my kid was real small.
Yeah. You think that the ECT does something to the actual like particulate matter that makes up memories in our brain that those are unrecoverable? Do you think there's a chance that there's some day that you might unlock those? Or?
Maybe. A fair amount of stuff came back, but not everything, and probably won't.
Yeah.
That's a known issue.
Yeah. What is your favorite place to gig?
Pinhook is really, really great.
The Pinhook?
Yeah.
I know that name, but I've never played there. Where is the Pinhook?
Yeah. In Durham.
Durham.
At the
Wait, maybe I have played there.
The barbecue thing, PRF.
Yeah, I played there.
Right quick.
PRF, Carolina Barbecue.
Yeah.
Man, we got there late on the last day, and everybody was either exhausted or just shit hammered.
Yeah, people were partying that day. I was surprised.
Yeah, and then that rainstorm came through.
Mm-hmm.
It was just one of those crazy Carolina thunderstorms where it feels like the very buildings are going to be blown away.
It held off while we made the food, though, so that's good.
Yeah.
I thought of something else.
You play there a lot?
We do. I mean, it's the hometown.
Yeah. I saw
Good
you
friends run that place. And
I've seen you play at the Durham Coffee House, too, which seems like a really special place.
It is. I think it changes year to year depending on who's running it, but it's a little spot of anarchy on that campus.
Somebody told me that the Durham, like the peace movement that happened at Duke happened at the Duke Coffee House. Like it was planned, executed.
Yeah.
That was the sort of command central for it.
Huh.
So it's one of the reasons that the people who have now grown up to be trustees and board members of Duke, who have fond memories of the student rebellion of the 70s.
Oh yeah.
Are going to preserve it forever.
I do regret.
You were going to say another place?
I can't remember what it was though. Never mind.
Where? Oh, you don't. Okay.
Maybe it'll come to me.
If you remember at any time, feel free to bust in. So, income and visa considerations aside, if you could live anywhere in the world, where would you live?
Cinque Terre, Italy.
Oh, I've never been there. What's
It's
it like?
a series of 5 hill towns
Mm-hmm.
in the Bay of Naples. And you can see Vesuvius.
Wow.
And all the buildings are pink and yellow and purple and blue and green and just perched, just like they were drizzled onto the coast.
Right. When were you there?
Our honeymoon, we went to Italy.
Oh, nice.
And we planned that to be the first place, and just rode a train down there all day from Rome and didn't have anywhere to stay. And walked into the first place that said albergo on it. And they just took our stuff and said, yeah, come on. So we gave them our passports and all our bags and hoped it was like a hotel. And they took us to a room and opened these shutters, this just wooden window coverings with no window or screen or anything. And just
Right.
the smell of wisteria and lemons came in, and there's just blue water and a volcano, and nothing is fast. Nothing is... People do cool things there. They work hard there, but there's no false sense of urgency.
There's a headline today that I saw right before we came in here that said Americans are the most stressed people in the world. And, we have a special kind of capitalism in America because the nitro fuel in American capitalism was chattel slavery.
Yeah.
And it kicked off a kind of relationship between capital and labor that continues to have effects to this day. And I think that people who try to solve cultural problems in this country without considering the roots of it. Well, Fez and I talked about my bug out plan. Fez Rossi, guy I interviewed earlier in this show, and I was talking about Central Mexico having a little more humane quality of life. The anti-immigration people are like, if America is so bad, why do people keep coming here? I'm like, well, it's because they can make a lot of money in a short time by completely negating their humanity. So, but then they go back to Guanajuato or Chiapas or, wherever they're from, and they live well. So, but I love those the Easter egg colored buildings make me really happy.
Yeah.
That you described in Cinque Terre too.
It is lovely.
So, what is your perfect musical instrument, and do you or do you not already own it?
Huh. Well, I don't buy many things. I never got the, I think I never started the
gear obsession.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you have to start it, and then you kind of have the capital to reinvest if you decide
it's time to upgrade.
Yeah, or just change. But I have a drum kit.
Mm-hmm. I've played it.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's pretty good. It's not the best drum kit I've ever played.
Sounds pretty good.
It does. It takes a lot of abuse.
Yeah.
It's well built and easy to get along with for the most part.
It's a custom kit, though, right? Who made it?
GMS.
That's right. It's not custom.
They didn't make it for me, yeah.
It's kind of unusual.
Strange sizes.
Right.
But loud.
Yeah.
I love that. I do want to get a Black Beauty snare drum and argue with it for the rest of my life at some point.
We should talk.
Yeah. But see, I got to get that one thing that I can get rid of to.
Right.
I have a guitar.
Yeah.
I think I was listening to one of the shows where it was a thing you grab if your house is on fire.
Right.
And it's that guitar. So.
What guitar is it?
It's a 78 Gibson The Paul.
The Paul.
It's a version of the Les Paul that looks like a coffee table.
Right.
It's the best guitar.
Yeah.
God.
Just does the thing.
It does, and it's
fancy.
I mean, I don't know. I played gold tops. I played fancy Les Pauls. The necks weren't as nice.
Right.
Cheap materials sometimes end up working out.
Let me tell you about a company called the Gretsch Drum Company.
Yeah.
They cut every corner that they could to squeeze a dime out of that product, and somehow ended up making the iconic jazz drum kit.
Yep.
12-inch toms with only 5 lugs.
Yep.
Those weird self-tapping screws.
Bearing edge.
Right. It's like they just did everything they could to make those drums cheap, and somehow ended up.
They have to be round.
Right.
I want answers.
Right.
It doesn't have to be round.
I mean, at one point, someone who's been in the industry a long time told me that he was at a NAMM show or some kind of gear conference, and Fred Gretsch was the early 80s, and was just ranting about why people weren't just using, because he had some investment in Simmons, the electronic drums, and he was like, I don't understand why anybody even plays wooden drums anymore. This is
wood.
It's like that. I've never known a company to have more of a contempt for its core constituency and the product that it makes until recent years, when I guess the new Fred, the youngest Fred, or I think they sold to Cayman or Gibraltar or something. And DW owns the company now. They're making the best drums they've ever made. But yeah, what a wild ride that is. So I have a new question, and I haven't really figured out how to phrase it perfectly yet. So we're going to try it out. This will be the last question, but. So there's a taxi, and it's not constrained by time or space, and you get into this taxi and you say to the driver, "Take me home." Where is that taxi going to take you?
That's a really good question, because there's a couple really different ways to answer that. Now it's half an hour from here. I mean, that's where
your family is, your daughter.
That's my family. That's where I have been trying to get better. That's where I built a shed. I've built everything I've built pretty much there.
Mm-hmm.
But after next week, I'm going to be physically constrained a great deal by the weather and just the humidity. And I don't feel at home at all. I hate it.
Every generation of my family, and I'm from North Carolina, which I don't know if I've mentioned. Most of my family is still in North Carolina, but every generation has one Ferguson that goes out west and doesn't come back.
Yeah.
My cousin Marty lives in the Rockies. He's got no interest in being in North Carolina for any of the humid months. And the generation before that was my Uncle Kenny, moved out west.
But 2.5 hours up the hill is a lot different. And Boone is where my body feels at home.
Right.
You just knock off 10, 15 degrees, and it being kind of humid in the summer isn't such a big deal.
Where did you have a relationship with your grandparents?
Yeah.
Where do they live? Or I'm sure
they've all passed away, but one half. Most of my family's from Ohio originally. Burgles, Ohio. Just all mining. And my other grandmother's from Pittsburgh. Before that, not too much before that. Ireland,
right?
Greece,
right?
Yeah, my grandfather was Greek.
Really?
You don't know that looking at me.
No,
you would know it looking at my sister.
What?
It's really crazy how.
What was his last name?
Nephoris.
Huh.
Yeah.
Have you?
The other half are all just Welsh and.
Yeah. Have you been to Greece?
No.
You've been to Ireland?
Yeah.
How was Ireland?
Beautiful.
One of the few European countries I haven't been to.
It's really, really beautiful. It's very funny. It's very... At first, kind of forbidding, and then no one is... It's all the cliche. No one is a stranger kind of thing.
The Irish people I've known, man, have been more emotionally available than any other human beings I've ever met, except maybe West Africans. Like, just more ready to laugh, more ready to cry, more ready to tell the truth, more ready to tell a great story that maybe isn't true. Yeah. And I just, it explains to me why the English hate them. Because talk about an emotionally constipated culture.
5 minutes ago, we were going to kick your ass, one of the guys said to me. And I stayed there until 2:30 in the morning, singing the few old rebel songs I knew in this bar that had been closed.
Right.
In Derry. It was, yeah. Well, you know yet another Patrick Walsh in New York. Yeah.
Classic example.
Classic.
Right.
Is that beta version? That's not even version 1 in this country yet, I don't think. That's like 0.5 generation off the boat. He's got dual citizenship now.
Yeah. Sweet man.
He is.
And a mess.
He is. Oh, God, yes.
One of the times when I asked the question, what is the most frightened you've ever been? Walsh was like, I was in the back of a police car. I was like, I want to hear the rest of this story. Yeah. Like, it was an amazing ride.
I was in the back of a police car. Huh? Yeah.
Right.
He's lighting a smoke every 3 minutes somehow.
Yeah.
I think he's handing them off.
Man, I'm really grateful that you're able to do this.
Thank you for having me. This has been...
I know that it wasn't easy, but I think that you may save a life today, maybe more than one.
That's very kind of you to say. Thank you.
Man, there's people out there that have suffered with this thing who don't know that there is any possibility of getting better. And the fact that you're doing, if not great now, but at least better, it's going to be important to someone who hears this.
It really is. There really is stuff out there. It's not, we're not doing telethons for it or anything yet, but maybe there's a color associated with depression now, but there's not,
right.
There's not a month. There's not celebrate this survivor's story. There's it's not cancer. It's not heart disease. It's not visible. There's nothing outward except your laziness.
Yeah. Man, I saw some headline the other day.
Can't get anywhere.
Laziness doesn't exist. And I thought, man, you don't have to tell me. Like, I know what that is, But the comments on the article were like, oh, yeah, you should meet my ex-girlfriend. I'm like, maybe your ex-girlfriend was depressed because she was dating him. Fuck up like you.
Anyone who starts off with, you should meet my ex-girlfriend.
Yeah. I just, man, people... I sort of stumbled into this idea for a podcast as I was trying to, I knew I wanted to do a podcast because I have such a deep love of the people that are close to me and the people who matter to me, and I wanted to sort of tell their stories, but I was trying to figure out how could I make it important? How could I make it matter? And then Thor Harris came and stayed with me for a few days, and I thought, this man is such an inspiration to me and so many people who suffered, and it all kind of clicked, and that's where Crash and Ride came from, was this like idea that no one is speaking plainly and honestly about this. And so what you've done today, which I know was not easy, it matters.
Thanks. Well, I know, I mean, when you called the first time, I told you this is what I've been thinking about too. I don't mind talking about this stuff at all. I know more about it than I know about most things at this point.
Yeah.
You know, not all the chemistry, but just the experience of dealing with this stuff. And yeah, anytime I can help. Thank you.
Thank you. I love you, man.
Love you. Thanks.
Man, that was a heavy one. Thank God for this whole ketamine thing. We got to find a way to make that available to everyone who's running out of options and needs help. I've been contacted by one of the show's benefactors, a friend of mine from Austin, Texas, who says it's also working for him. I'm going to talk more to him later today. I'm just going to give him a call. Man, that was a good interview. Thanks, Evan. Holy cow. I just want to remind everybody that the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is 24/7, free and confidential. 1-800-273-8255. They have trained volunteers who are there to listen and help direct you to community resources if they're available to you. Remember to support live music. Go see bands in your town. Support bands that you believe in. Be kind to yourself. Be brave. Be here tomorrow. And remember that loud guitars save lives.